So many pupils don't really know how to write formal letters. So for God's sake, let's put it right. Schofield on Shakespeare. In this video, I'm going to look at past pupil responses to a question from June 2022. Write a letter to the local council to persuade them to provide better outdoor facilities for young people. This pupil wrote, "Dear all, have you ever wondered just why all the local teens seem so bored and uninspired? Why they sit inside on their phones all day? Why some fall into the trap of harmful activities? I am about to tell you why and how you can help them and save yourself the trouble of cleaning up their mess. So I hope you read carefully." And so, what do you make of this opening paragraph? Discuss or think independently. Press pause. This video will resume in 5 seconds time. Some reflections. Firstly, the opening 3 rhetorical questions. Whilst a set of 3 rhetorical questions might be a great way to start a speech and involve your audience, it is not appropriate for a formal letter. Remember that in a formal letter, you need to state the purpose of your letter in the first sentence and get to the point. Council officers don't have time to read rhetorical wishy-washy claptrap. Instead, they want to know immediately what you are writing about and whether they need to act upon it. Something like this would be far more appropriate. I'm writing to you to express my concerns about the condition of the facilities within Bar End Park. But actually, we also need to look at who the letter is addressed to. Dear all. This is too casual and general. You could name a made-up individual within the council, for instance, Dear Mr. Hales, or potentially you could write, for the attention of the leader of Barnet County Council. Don't waste time in a formal letter. If you waffle, the recipient is likely to switch off very quickly. The phrase, "I'm about to tell you why," needs to be more specific, or at least introduce some of the key concerns, which will be explored in further detail within subsequent paragraphs. And so I would prefer something like this. The swings are rusted and unusable, the ground is generally littered with rubbish, and the walls are covered in abusive, threatening graffiti. Make sure you maintain a formal tone throughout. The phrase, "save yourself the trouble of cleaning up their mess," is far too colloquial. Instead, I would write, "The purpose of this letter is to highlight some of the problems with the outdoor facilities in Bar End, as well as other local parks, and propose some cost-effective solutions." Time for another introduction from a different past pupil. Dear Governors, I'm writing for a purpose. I'm writing for our youth. I'm writing for change. That change is paramount and must happen without delay. It is time for the facilities in our community to be upgraded to give stronger and better opportunities for our society. And there is no doubt about it. I've asked many people and they all come to the same conclusion. We need to get young people outdoors. Discuss or think about this. It's pause time. Some reflections. Leaving the extraordinary suggestion that there are governors at the local council. Remember, governors are those involved in schools. What do you make of these 3 opening sentences? They are short and quite engaging, but not appropriate for a formal letter to the council, in which you need to avoid melodrama and stick to factual formality. For a speech, great. For a letter, go for something more like, "I'm writing to draw your attention to the appalling state of the facilities within Gosport Avenue Park." Whilst I think it is fine to emphasise the importance of change, I would avoid chatty, hopeful, weak anecdotes in which you reference asking many people who, great news coming, agree with you. Write more formally. For instance, there is a broad consensus amongst members of our community, : we need to get young people outdoors. Time now for a very interesting response from past pupil 3. To whom it may concern, with utmost respect, I would like to express my sincerest apologies in advance for my blunt and harsh language, which to some would understand would become off as offensive and impolite. However, I beseech you to understand this, that I write not as a crazed lunatic to insult and offend, but as a passionate believer in the future of Selsey and its future generations of inhabitants to come. That said, what I am certainly not apologetic for is the abominable offences which I am about to painfully bring to light. What do you reckon? Think. It's pause time. Very well written, isn't it? This pupil knows that this is GCSE English language, and to some extent showing off is called for. But what a load of wishy-washy waffling. You're writing to the local council. For God's sake, get on with it. Remember, you need to state the purpose of your letter within the opening sentence. This is not a piece of creative writing in which you want to build up interest and intrigue before revealing a key clue or intriguing detail. This is not a speech. It is a letter to the local council, who, remember, if stereotypes are accurate, are likely to have the imagination of newts and gnats. In the second sentence, the past pupil writes that he writes not as a crazed lunatic. Reassuring! Thank God for that! Why would you state this and even open up the possibility of you being dismissed as a crazed lunatic? Nuts! Instead, I would go for something more like, whilst I recognise that there are likely to be differences of opinions on both sides, I would like to reassure you that I am writing as a passionate believer in the future of Selsey and its future generations of inhabitants to come. Maintain that formal tone. A fourth past pupil wrote, Dear Council, I'm writing to you to express a great concern on behalf of all young people in the county, the state of our outdoor park. Quite simply put, it has been left in ruins. Graffiti stains the walls, the fences of the AstroTurf are jagged and rusty, the hoops on the basketball court are crooked and malformed. And in just a blink, summer is going to come, a great period of sport, sweat, banter and laughter. However, as our communal space of happiness continues to deteriorate, our plans for the summer are jeopardised day by day. But then I hear you ask, well, why should we care? What do you reckon? Yes, pause time. Well, this start is much better, isn't it? No waffle, no rhetorical flushes, no melodramatic short sentences, just an explanation of why you are writing. However, one minor flaw. Where the bleeding heck is the outdoor park? Even if there is only one which is covered by the local council, which is unlikely, make sure you are specific. I like the fact that some specific details have subsequently been given, although a pedant might well point out that these issues would be relatively easy and cheap to fix, thus making the subsequent descriptions of woe and angst somewhat redundant. However, I wonder about this sentence. And in just a blink, summer is going to come, a great period of sport, sweat, banter and laughter. What on earth does the council have to do with sweat, banter and laughter? Is it their job to police and promote happiness, or to offer a reasonable service to local people using the limited resources available? And so, I would be wary about trying to use too much emotive language within a letter to the local council. Aim to stick to carefully reasoned formal arguments which use a formal tone. Thus, I would also cut rather strange emotive phrases such as our communal space of happiness, and avoid rather feeble, pathetic, emotive rhetorical questions such as, well, why should we care? Councils are paid to provide services for people. It's not about whether they bloody care or not. I would prefer something like this. I would urge you to inspect the existing facilities in Bulwell's outdoor park as a matter of urgency to ensure that local children are able to take full advantage of the summer when it finally comes. Finally, a fifth, who writes, Dear Council, I'm writing to express my concern about the lack of any outdoor facilities available for the newer generation. I remember my childhood, and particularly the hours upon hours spent in this town's skate park. I've noticed that the youths had very few places to enjoy the outdoors and connect with their friends. As a direct consequence of this, they have resorted to loitering in the dog park. I must say this is a disturbance to my normal strolls with Barney. And do we really think of them as dogs? If dogs have their own space, shouldn't they? I believe there is a problem that needs attention, and I would like to propose some solutions. Thoughts? Pause time. The formal tone is better, and the pupil does indeed state why he is writing clearly and explicitly within the first sentence. I think the nostalgic reflections on the writer's childhood are fine and give the letter backgrounds. However, what the hell's going on here with the random rant about dogs and how they are viewed? Stick to the point. If you have to mention bloody Barney, by all means do so, but remain focused on the purpose and task of the letter, which is try to persuade someone in the local council to provide better outdoor facilities for young people. 4 tips on writing better formal letters. For God's sake, follow them. You have been watching Schofield on Shakespeare. Good luck.